It's a real pleasure for me to speak at the Botanical Gardens, the organization that I greatly admired, and not only a wonderful resource locally, San Diego County, but now developing outreach to so many other scientific organizations globally. So local and global, and it's really neat seeing the newest programs under Colin's stewardship beginning to develop more and more. It's also a pleasure for me for the first time being in the Dickinson Center. And the Dickinsons, Martin and Carol, became good friends with them about 10 years ago. We sponsored 2 consecutive annual art exhibits featuring landscape painting, particularly plein air painting of Southern California at the California Center of the Arts. And those were very nice fundraisers for the San Dieguito River Valley Conservancy. They are now in Hawaii most of the time. I was hoping that maybe they'd appear here, but they have been great inspirations for me. Their kindness and particularly their generosity has been astounding, I guess. Among many of their philanthropic donations has been the Botanical Gardens. Also, with or without your permission, Colin, I want to brag about you a little bit, if I may. I have followed Colin's peripatetic career over many years, starting with his interest in Sonora Desert, working with Gary Nabhan, who some of you may be familiar with, working for the Arizona-based Native Seed Group, and then on to Europe for his PhD, working in Italy with the UN for many years, SEAT in Colombia, as part of the Seed Bank in Norway, many different activities over the years, and now has come back home. So welcome back, Colin. Oh, and I want to tell you one other story. Pretty funny. This is actually true. For many years before I retired, my wife and I would wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning to NPR News. And then we'd be able to snooze a little bit and get up half an hour later. One morning, I think it was about 10 years ago, my wife nudges me and says, "Wake up, wake up. That sounds like Colin on the radio." I said, "What?" So I got up from my slumber and started listening. Sure enough, Colin was being interviewed on NPR about where various food crops originate. And that's actually, how many NPR interviews have you had now, Colin? Oh, you lost count, but I've been very delighted with the amazing impact that Colin has had in his many activities.
Well, I should invite family members to come talk more often. I want to be selected.
Yeah. So a few months ago, my wife and I were talking about the presentation. She said, you need to come up with a really good title. I said, yeah, I guess you're right about that. So we started brainstorming. And then I said, well, how about the allure of the San Dieguito River Valley? And she thought a bit and she said, I like it. That's sexy, but not too sexy. So hopefully you'll find this of interest. And then, once I selected the title, how am I going to answer that question? The best way for me to do that is to share with you what some of the very many and intriguing features of the River Valley I found. And another very important part of it is that this has been the object of a decades-long community effort to preserve and protect it. Let me kind of describe a little bit more about myself first. I've always had an appreciation for nature, and I really attribute that to my mother helping develop that. And I think it kind of points to the fact that kids need that mentorship in childhood, with parents, friends, scouts, organizations like the Botanical Gardens. Our family, when I was a kid, had the good fortune of taking family vacations to some national parks at times. And I remember very vividly, about 8 years old, being a kid from Oklahoma, had no idea what to expect. And I tumbled out of the car with my two older brothers to Tunnel View at Yosemite. How many have seen Tunnel View at Yosemite? I think almost everybody. So I remember stepping out, had again no idea what to expect. And there, El Capitan to the left, Half Dome in the distance, many waterfalls, the forest down below. And I burst into tears. I just could not believe the beauty. And I think everybody here probably has had some similar experiences, maybe not quite that dramatic, from appreciation, being really struck by the beauty of distant vistas, the majesty of forest, starlit night where you can clearly see the Milky Way bursting forth, the power of storms, unexpected encounters with wildlife, or many different experiences that can elicit that sense of awe. My wife and I were drawn in part to each other with our common interest in nature and loved exploring lots of different places. When we moved out here in 1979, we were very excited about exploring many of the wonderful areas in San Diego County, which we did. But it really wasn't until I went through docent training for the San Dieguito River Park in 1994 that I more fully appreciated what an incredible and special natural area we have in San Diego County. And that led me, the more you know about something, the more you love it, the more you love it, the more you want to do to protect it. So consequently, after concluding that the San Dieguito River Valley Conservancy was a very effective organization where I would not be wasting my time volunteering for, I joined it and have been a member of the board in either active or advisory capacity since 1996. In 2007, my wife and I established a program we call the Exploring Sense of Place program. And I'm mentioning this because a number of the photographs I'll show were from that group, which is now in its 16th year. It's a group of only 25 that meets over the course of a year and 8 times in representative locations of the river park. Each with a particular focus and an expert. And an important part of the program also is that we have quiet reflective time where 20 to 30 minutes, people go out alone. The only requirement is to be quiet. And it's amazing the creativity that emerges under those circumstances. 2 years ago, I became chair of the Citizens Advisory Committee of the River Park and consequently sit on the River Park board along with elected officials. I also want to mention financial support. You know, this is something that anybody can do in whatever capacity feels right for them and whatever amount able. But it's amazing how much can be accomplished by having an effective organization where their basic operating expenses are met. And another good example, the botanical gardens. Well, what is it about the San Dieguito River Valley? For many years, former supervisor Pam Slater Price frequently would refer to the river park as the Yosemite of San Diego County. And I think she was onto something. Now, admittedly, we don't have any glacier-carved valleys. We don't have 3 of the top 10 highest waterfalls in the world. But we have 2 things the Yosemite does not have. One, location. It's close to all the residents of San Diego County, and particularly with it being a regional park covering 55 miles east to west. Also, it's an entire river valley, and I think that there's something special. It kind of hits a sweet zone in being big enough, but not too small. So let me quote this. The San Dieguito River Valley's 55 miles length is large and varied enough to capture the sense of a half of a continent. Yet the river valley is small enough to be envisioned as a cohesive whole in a way that larger systems cannot. So this is a quote from the Union Tribune, 2001. When you get to be my age, you can quote yourself. It's an article I wrote. Also wanted to point out an excellent resource book, San Diego, Introduction to the Region, 5th edition. Phil Pride, Professor Emeritus in Geology from San Diego State, wrote this. This is an excellent resource covering all different topics of San Diego County. Here is a map of the 11 watersheds flowing from the Great Western Divide to the Pacific. To the east, San Felipe watershed flows into the Salton Sea. In years past, ancient Lake Cahuilla was high enough that it would actually overflow into the Gulf of California. Let me point out the San Dieguito River, 346 square miles. Also, the Tijuana River, largest watershed, and only 1/4 is in the United States. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the Conservancy and the river park itself. And most people kind of figure it's one organization, but there's a wonderful synergistic effect of having an all-volunteer organization, the Conservancy, governed by a volunteer board. We have 4 Dynamite staff members. The Conservancy was established in 1986. But the roots really go back to the mid-1970s. And there was a proposal to dredge the San Dieguito Lagoon and make it into a major commercial marina. Some citizens in Del Mar and Solana Beach didn't think that was the best use of that pristine open space. And that project never went forward. However, they did lobby for the San Onofre nuclear plant mitigation to focus on the San Dieguito Lagoon. And that's an ongoing project now, many years. It's proceeding very, very well. But although their initial focus was just on the lagoon, they started wondering, hey, why the heck are we stopping at the lagoon? Let's go ahead and preserve the entire 55 miles of the river valley. And that was an extremely audacious vision. And they came up with this signature idea of having the coast to crest trail kind of knit it together. And that's been the vision that has captured so many volunteers over the last 40 years. One of the most important early accomplishments of the Conservancy was to lobby for the actual river park to be established in 1989. The river park actually manages the river park. So it has 8 rangers, but the Conservancy and the river park, again, collaborate very well together. It's estimated that the 2 groups over the last since inception have gotten over $200 million in grants in helping to flesh out this wonderful vision. Let me come back and later example, most recent example of that. Again, the river park is governed by the elected officials of the entities that have land use authority over the 55 miles. Here is a picture of the watershed boundary in blue. In red is what's called the focus planning area. And that's purely a planning tool for the river park and Conservancy. And basically it's the viewshed from the river park, from the river and its major tributaries. You can also see that it extends a little bit outside the boundary of the watershed into the desert. A lot of people think that the ultimate boundary will be the focus planning area. That's not quite true. But this is one of my favorite slides that shows in solid colors all the lands that are in some form of protected ownership. In green, before about 20 years ago. In blue, the lands that have been acquired since then. So you see how much of the area within the focus planning area is preserved. When the idea of the Conservancy first formed, they knew that there was a great opportunity to protect the land because it was largely undeveloped. Similarly, there was a great opportunity for it to be developed. And fortunately, see that it's been largely protected as open space. This map is outdated, fortunately, in the Vulcan Mountain area. We work very closely with our partner, the Vulcan Mountain Foundation, in acquiring lands. And about 8 out of 9,000 acres of the original Rutherford Ranch is now acquired. This little section between the Santa Isabel East and West preserves is now owned by the county, 150 acres, and that will provide the corridor for the Coast to Crest Trail. This little square, 40 acres, acquired by the Conservancy not too long ago. And Bernardo Mountain around Lake Hodges, and the white area here to the west of Lake Hodges is now also acquired by the Conservancy. And those have been wonderful acquisitions. A bit more about the Coast to Crest Trail. The two big remaining segments that are not yet completed of the envisioned 71 miles of Coast to Crest Trail are 5 miles in Clevenger Canyon along there, and then 8-mile segment from Lake Sutherland to the Santa Isabel West Preserve. I mentioned the collaboration between the Conservancy and the River Park. Last year, we had the Fill the Gap campaign, and we met our goals in 6 months of raising $2 million. Absolutely critical to provide the funding for the planning and permitting phase to fill those last 2 gaps and to complete the Coast to Crest Trail. So right now we're doing the planning. Those funds also will provide matching funds to actually build the trail in those 2 gaps. And we're very optimistic that there won't be any problem because we've been very successful in obtaining similar grants in the past. So I've always been hoping that in my lifetime, I'll be able to hike the Coast to Crest Trail. I think I got a shot at it. Hopefully another 4 years. A little bit more about what's going on in the coast. Just out of the picture here, there's a crossing that's fully funded and planned and permitted, which includes a bridge over the river just downstream from Whispering Palms Golf Course, and that will provide a segment that goes to San Dieguito Road. This segment along the polo fields is currently being planned. The polo fields, by nature of their lease with the city of San Diego, have been required to build the Coast to Crest Trail at their expense. And after years of delay and procrastination, they finally gotten around to do it. So I'm delighted with that. El Camino Real Bridge is going to be replaced, and that will allow an undercrossing for the Coast to Crest Trail and 2 access points there, and connects to the Coast to Crest Trail that's currently open to the public, including, going down to the underneath Interstate 5 to Jimmy Dranny Boulevard. There's a segment here that's planned on the Del Mar Fairgrounds, leading to a lookout point that will have a wonderfully designed facility designed by the Hubble family, and that will complement one that already exists at the foot of Vulcan Mountain, kind of bookends project. The current railroad bridge is going to be replaced, double tracking and elevated, so it will allow undercrossing on the Del Mar River Path Trail, ending at the Camino Del Mar. Also, this little trail here is currently being nearing completion, that will connect the old Grand Avenue viewpoint with the the Crest Canyon Trail System. So lots happening. Well, what is it that I find alluring? I think for me, enjoying the beauty of nature and having a heightened sense of being in the present, very enjoyable for me. You know, listening for everything, feeling the wind, the smells, looking at all the plants and animals. But in addition to that, I developed much greater appreciation of unique features of the river valley, geological processes, Native American culture, plants and animals, and the opportunity to share this with others and preserve it for future generations. So let me share a few photos. This is on the Great Western Divide, looking east into Anza-Borrego State Park, and about a 2,500 foot drop into San Felipe Valley. For the biologist here, you might be interested, you see a little bit of a green coloration. That is a remnant pinyon pine forest and part of the Sky Island habitats that we have in San Diego. Granite Peak. And then off to the left, you can't see it in this photo, the Salton Sea, and on clear days you can see into the mountains of Arizona. Absolutely incredible vistas there. And not far from here, you can look west. You see the San Diego skyline and on to the Coronado Island. So incredible location. Not far from prior photograph is the biggest tree that I know of in San Diego County, enormous canyon live oak, probably well over 300 years old. And this has become a class photo for Exploring Sense of Place program. And you can see all the happy faces of people exhilarated by being out in a beautiful location. This is one of the many beautiful cascading waterfalls. You feel like you're in Yosemite in that segment between Lake Sutherland and Santa Isabel West Preserve that is not yet open to the public, but hopefully will be within 4 years or so. This is actually on River Park land and be just adjacent to the Costa Crest Trail. This is Lake Sutherland. A lot of people don't know about this reservoir. The Conservancy a number of years ago purchased the remaining 240 acres there, so Corral Mountain will remain pristine as it is now, and the Costa Crest Trail will go along the base there. Here is on top of the Clevenger Canyon South Trail. You see San Pasqual Valley in the distance. On a clear day, you can see the Pacific and Channel Islands. We went to this location last month with our Exploring Sense of Place program, but it was raining pretty steady. After hand wringing, I decided, we should postpone it because it was 1,000 foot elevation gain and trail might be slippery. But there were 5 people who decided to go ahead. They got wet, but they were rewarded by this incredible rainbow. Looking, who has seen a rainbow from top looking down? I've never seen it. I'm still kicking myself that I didn't go with them. But yeah, just a tiny, good observation. You've got good eyesight. This is a picture of Lake Hodges in happier days from the summit of Bernardo Mountain, right near where Colin grew up and explored a lot. It's going to be, this is one of a number of really great side trails. So it's not only the Costa Crest Trail, but side trails as well. And it'll probably be at least 8 years before the new dam is completed and Lake Hodges will return to its full glory. At least the planning process is being expedited with the dam replacement. Geology. How many here knew that our San Diego location served as one of the most convincing lines of evidence to support plate tectonic theory, which only became accepted like in the 1960s, relatively recently? Well, let me tell you this incredible story. I hope you find it as incredible as I do. Rhyolite is a common rock of volcanic origin, but it has a characteristic that depending on where it erupts, it has a unique chemical signature. And geologists in the 19th century knew that, and they found that there was the same rhyolite found in Sonora, Mexico, inland and coastal San Diego, and Santa Cruz Island. So they were dumbfounded. How could that rhyolite been dispersed over hundreds and hundreds of miles? Didn't make any sense. If you want to stump people, you can ask them, what's the biggest river in San Diego County? They'll never get the answer. It's the Botanic River. It's a historic, prehistoric river. It's buried under sediment now, but there's a grain of truth in that, at least. So here's the story. Beginning 150 million years ago, in the middle of the age of the dinosaurs, this ridge of volcanoes started to erupt in mainland Mexico. And over the next 100 million years, the Botanic River formed. And the origin was probably about 7,000 feet, higher than the mountains in San Diego. And it was 200 miles long and 2 miles wide. And it was subject to seasonal flooding that dispersed the rhyolite that formed from the volcano throughout the entire river valley. And then over the next 50 million years, the Botanic River started to fracture as the Pacific plates began to tear portions of the North American plate off. Here we are 12.5 million years ago. You see the terminal section going north and actually rotating 180 degrees. 4 million years ago, the San Andreas Fault was just beginning to form, and that as the land started rafting farther, not only fractured further the Botanic River, but created the Gulf of California and tore off San Diego County that had been part of mainland Mexico before that. So if you want a little rule of thumb, the San Andreas Fault is rafting in the northwest at about the rate of 2 inches a year, which is the same rate as your fingernail grows. So you can think about that every time you clip your fingernails. So here we are today, and you can see the different parts of the old Botanic River in Mexico, San Diego County, and then Santa Cruz Island near Santa Barbara. So here's the depiction of the fan delta, and even around Scripps Ranch, you can see part of the alluvial fan of the Botanic River. Was anybody else intrigued by that as like I am? Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, all right. Great. All right. Wonderful. Thank you. Archaeology. Another intriguing figure for me was that not far from where I live, Malcolm Rogers, I learned, began to dig what was called the Harris Archaeological Site in 1919. Located about 2 miles downstream from the Hodges Dam. It's now covered up intentionally with sediment and sand to allow future archaeologists, if they were to dig it out again, have it preserved. What really gripped me was that for decades, another superlative of the San Dieguito River Valley, for decades this was considered one of the most significant archaeological sites in the entire Western Hemisphere. And that was because it documented continuous habitation over the last 12,000 years, including three very distinct Indian cultures. So the oldest, the San Dieguito complex, beginning about 12,000 years ago, characterized by large projectile points that were put on spears. The Native Americans from that time used this to hunt the megafauna that was around, the giant sloths, saber-toothed tigers, and possibly mammoths. La Jolla phase, beginning about 8,000 years ago, a change, and it became focused more on utilizing the marine resources with the lagoons. They had boats that they used tar, naturally occurring tar, to waterproof them. Were able to carve fishing hooks. In one of the archaeological sites, over 20 different types of seafood shells were found. So they utilized the sea, but they also probably hunted, went into the interior of San Diego County as well. Another fascinating thing about the La Jolla phase is that they were the only group that actually buried their dead. And in one of the burial sites, they found obsidian that is in the burial site that was found originally in Sonora, Mexico, 200 miles away. And some of the burial sites in Sonora, Mexico contain shells from the San Diego coastline. So indicates thousands of years ago, the Indians had an extensive trading system. And then beginning about 2,000 years ago, the Kumeyaay phase, they thrived on technologies that were imported from the desert, pottery, bows and arrows for the first time, and probably most important, acorn processing that allowed a stable food source throughout the year. And it was estimated that San Diego County had a population of about 40,000 Kumeyaay when the Spanish arrived. Tragically, that was down 90% to 4,000 50 years later, and that kind of tracked what happened in most Indian cultures after exposure to the Europeans. One of the neat trails in the side trails of the river park is the Piedras Pintadas Trail in Rancho Bernardo, painted rock. And here's, you can see this with your binoculars. This is called the San Bernardo style, and has kind of the maze-like structures. Don't really know what purpose this served, but it's wonderful having those available. Botany. The botanist here, I'm sure Colin knows that San Diego is a biologically diverse hotspot, and that the county has the most plant species in the county of any county in the U.S. And this is due to the very diverse topography and rainfall. Over 2,000 different plant species call San Diego County their home. And why is that? Well, this diagram depicts all the different vegetation communities, and each one is ideal for a certain group of fauna and flora. Let me point out just two. One, the pine forest. Again, the remnant, beautiful pine forest on Vulcan Mountain, the other mountains in San Diego County, huge oak trees, incense cedar. The gallery forest here represents the riparian habitat that is very important in terms of wildlife, with sometimes enormous coast live oak, sycamore, willow, cottonwoods. So this looks like a topographical map, but it's not. It actually depicts the average rainfall in San Diego County. About 10 inches at the airport, 12 inches at Del Mar, 16 inches in Lake Hodges region, 20 in Ramona, so progressively more as you go to the Great Western Divide along here, over 30 inches. And then the closely spaced line here represents the rain shadows, as the amount of rain very quickly decreases. The point in Borrego Springs, only 5 inches a year. this shows the average rainfall. Uh, two aspects. We obviously have a dry season, rainy season, but also the rainfall is extremely variable. And fortunately, after 6 years of drought, we've now had 2 years of good rains. And I'm particularly relieved that the oak trees look like they're making a good comeback after being devastated by the oak borer beetle. Here is a picture that I took in March of 2008 after the 2007 witch fires. You can see, of course, the Lake Hodges Dam, and on the other side, it's still mainly charred chaparral. But on this side, this was the most incredible display of wildflowers that anybody had ever seen ever in any living memory, and because of the following the fire. The orange, primarily the poppies, the blue, Periphycelia, lupine, and others. Pretty amazing. And wildflowers generally pretty damn good in San Diego County. How many noticed incredible ceanothus this year? Yeah, quite dramatic, many locations. Birds. Anybody know any enthusiastic birders? Is anybody an enthusiastic birder here? It's okay to admit. Okay. Well, let me try to capture the enthusiasm. This quote from the San Diego Audubon Society. San Diego County boasts the biggest bird list of any county or of any area of equal size in the U.S. Over 520 species across the county! Exclamation point. Just one tip, never get between a birder and an important sighting. It's a little bit dangerous to get shoved aside. I was drawn when I learned that Lake Hodges is recognized as a globally important birding area. Great variety there. Okay, anybody identify these? Pardon me? Pardon me? Well, no. This is at an undisclosed location. I sworn to secrecy by my friend who took these pictures, but who can identify these? All right, I bet so. So, bald eagles and making a good comeback in San Diego County. So this next series of photographs taken by a friend of mine who is a cardiologist I knew for many years at Palomar and an amateur photographer. So he was very excited about his telephoto lens that he had on the nest, and he had a new camera with rapid shutter. And he saw this flutter of activity, and but he took the pictures and he had no idea what he had captured until he started looking at it. And these are the four pictures. Here you see a red-tailed hawk approaching the bald eagle. Red-tailed hawk's a pretty damn big bird. It looks tiny compared to the bald eagle. Does the bald eagle look very happy there? And then at the last minute, the red-tailed hawk veers off over the top, but not without clipping the wing of the bald eagle. And of course, this absolutely incredible series of photographs. And it reminds me of an experience I had many years ago. I was jogging at the base of Bernardo Mountain. It was late afternoon. My shadow projected, quite a distance in front of me. And all of a sudden, I was taken over by a shadow. And I wondered, what the heck is that? It has to be a plane. And I looked up, and a huge golden eagle flew 2 feet above me. And then, before I really had time to consider why the heck was he doing that, then I saw a red-tailed hawk was following him and harassing him. And apparently, the golden eagle thought maybe flying close enough to a smelly jogger might get that damn red tail hawk off of his tail, but it didn't work. But, I mentioned that too, because one of the wonderful things about having open space with the river park available to everybody are these magical encounters with wildlife. Whether it, I saw a friend yesterday who very anxious for him to show me his rattlesnake near encounter. So it was unexpected encounters can take a variety of different forms. So I just want to close with two quotes. The first from Jonas Salk. This has really gripped me. We have no greater responsibility than to strive to become good ancestors. And that captures the Native American insight to consider 7 generations in the future and how our actions in the present will affect future generations. Jonas practiced that himself. He was asked why he didn't patent the polio vaccine. And he said, it should belong to mankind, not to me. And he would have been a billionaire in today's dollars had he done so. The final quote, Logan Jenkins was a columnist, Union Tribune for many years, and I can't believe it's been almost a quarter of a century since the turn of this century. On December 31st, 1999, he wrote an article where he reviewed the significant events in North San Diego County over the preceding 100 years. And then he closed the article speculating what a journalist might write 100 years hence. Quote, at the close of the next century, the San Dieguito River Park, an ambitious conservation project stretching from Del Mar to Vulcan Mountain, may be considered North County's noblest achievement. Our great, still kind of cracks me up. Our great-grandchildren will judge us for what we save, not what we sell. So, thank you.